This video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez need no introduction. Well, maybe just a little for Rodriguez for some, but anyway. In the 90s, these two filmmakers became the quintessential names of American independent cinema, each producing their own auteur debut features, Reservoir Dogs and El Mariachi, the former being a non-linear character-centric homage to the 60s-70s crime genre, and the other being a neo-western action-packed spectacle produced on an extraordinary budget of around $7,000. Of course, while both filmmakers were extremely distinct in their efforts, they shared a deeply personal and passionate understanding of cinema on an intellectual, technical, and most significantly, artistic level. They are the definition of when style can actually be substance, and regardless of the hype that has consumed their work to the point of hyperbolic fandom, they represent one of the purest examples of artists who make their way in Hollywood. Hell, Rodriguez even wrote a novel called Rebel Without a Budget, which covers how he made such an ambitious action film simply using his creative skills, imagination, and things he had access to, dismantling the myth that you need a budget to do anything 15 years before things like YouTube even existed. As a result, it only made sense then that during their newfound fame, a collaboration was the natural expectation. A lot of folks probably know this best in their attempt at a grindhouse double feature project, where Rodriguez made a kick-ass zombie movie and Tarantino made whatever the hell self-indulgent nonsense Death Proof was. But probably their most cohesive project, despite having a similar divisive reputation, was a film that's best known by their cult following as, what if Reservoir Dogs suddenly became a vampire flick? So let's talk about it. I think we all know the legacy of Rodriguez and Tarantino has been long established, that there's not much point in me covering the same discussion about stylistic choices, as if that's the only thing these two guys were good at. I honestly believe there is no other film out there like From Dusk Till Dawn. If you wander into the film completely clueless, you will definitely turn your head at the sudden pivot into a B-movie creature feature after what is a pretty harrowing setup for a crime thriller. For its time, From Dusk Till Dawn never attempted to hide the horror behind its concept, so it wasn't the vampire angle that's introduced over halfway into the film that surprised everyone, it was just how real and visceral and even nihilistic the opening half was. The majority of the film is spent in the shoes of the Gecko brothers, two fugitive criminals wanted for murder and robbery who take an innocent family hostage to get themselves over the Mexican border. It's only when they finally get to Mexico do they stop at the happily named trucker bar Titty Twister, where it's actually built on an Aztec temple which vampires use conveniently as a feeding ground. Because, you know, shit happens and all that. But the thing is, since the setup is so distinct from the latter half of the film, with no foreshadowing or implication to allude to what's going to come, the vampire attack is basically just an elaborate subplot. Of course, that's not to undermine it, it's somewhat thematically pivotal to the story, you could say, but broadly speaking, it's kinda redundant to the central conflict of the real story, which is the Gecko brothers escaping the US and meeting their associates in Mexico, and in the process, hopefully letting the family go safely so that they can get back to rekindling their fragmented relationship. The subversive aspect of the film is really the opposite to what most modern self-aware horror and thrillers are really like. Usually these films are sold on some generic setup and then bombshell a surprise twist to the formula, style, or tone like Cabin in the Woods. But From Dusk Till Dawn is arguably more in the same vein as Evil Dead, where the brooding tension is met with a carnival of crazy yet horrific encounters that speak more closely to the ordeal the characters are going through. Basically, after setting up the sadistic behaviour of the brothers and going through the ass-opening suspense of crossing the Mexican border, as the film finally calms down to just a brief moment, suddenly everything comes to a halt as you ask yourself, how can this situation get any worse? From Dusk Till Dawn is more or less just a very dramatic punchline. We witness humanity at its very worst, especially through the lenses of Tarantino's character Richie, a psychopathic murderer who happens to be a sex offender with a very sinister liking for the daughter, only for the film to punch you in the stomach and say, well, I mean, monsters are a pretty gnarly extreme to complement the realism. I guess you could say it kinda leaves you questioning what is the real horror out there, what humanity is capable of, or what grotesque creatures live in the shadows of the night that we know nothing about, until it's too late that is. That's why I love the transition so much. You go in expecting a silly vampire action B-movie akin to Peter Jackson's Braindead, and what you get to today's standards isn't some brass, zany surprise, but an even more monstrous and unnerving human drama centered around ruthless, amoral criminals who really make you feel trapped and powerless to a greater extent than many more, fully committed provocative crime dramas, let's go with that. You're not just some passive observer to the experience worrying for the characters, you become a participant where you're practically a hostage to the Gecko brothers' control, or at least illusion of control. I'll come back to this later. When I compared it to Evil Dead, I wasn't talking about the comedic, not so serious approach to the sequel, I'm talking about the original, where despite the eccentric, bizarre caricatures, the family and the Gecko brothers remain completely stern and mature throughout the entire ordeal. They don't just suddenly fall in on the joke. They always uphold the real gritty aesthetic as if they literally just walked onto the set of a fucking Hammer horror film. It's like they were making the film in a studio lot and saw some edgelord gothic set and thought, shit, that looks cool, let's go make the movie there. Going back a bit, From Dusk Till Dawn wasn't developed with the intention of being a collaboration. Tarantino was originally hired to write the film based on VFX artist Robert Kurtzman's idea, only for Universal to pitch it as a sequel to the Tales from the Crypt film Demon Knight, until Rodriguez was attached to direct the film, and then it became its own entity. In fact, for some reason, Tarantino was then happy enough to cast himself as the psychotic sex-offending brother, and while Tarantino is a flat, stiff actor, he does fit the character well enough that George Clooney pretty much dominates every scene he's in and is able to show his control over his brother, contextually fitting the relationship between the two of them. At the time, Clooney was mostly known as a charming, attractive, caring doctor in ER, and to avoid typecasting, even though it became his major selling point as an actor anyway, he took on what was effectively a very transformative performance for him. To put it lightly, Seth is a real piece of shit that only becomes marginally more likable thanks to Clooney's performance and being compared against Tarantino's performance. At the same time, he is human enough that there is a personality behind him that's gradually ripped apart by Harvey Keitel's obligatory pastor who's lost his faith. Seth constantly boasts about being in control and having influence over people, but as the film progresses, Father Jacob scorns him for trying to mask a weakness and fear that's clearly behind him. It does allude to the idea that Seth has a vulnerability completely crushed by the monster that he is, that only thanks to Clooney's charisma are you able to partially sympathize with. You can tell he's holding back a darker side that we never see. There is no redemption for his character. He's never presented as an anti-hero, let alone an actual hero. By the end, the film maintains its cold, brutal persona that goes against the traditional structure of developing and changing characters from their experiences like every other story out there, where he just throws the surviving daughter some cash and then leaves as if life goes on and nothing really happened, maintaining the same unchanged cynicism that he had in the beginning. For a film that establishes such blatantly terrible characters, you'd think that they would get what they deserve in the form of some hellish punishment for their sins, but in the fashion of grindhouse cinema, it's not really the case. It commits more so to the pure, unapologetic nihilism where it's the characters you care most about who suffer the most. Nothing ever seems resolved or purposeful, and that's kind of the point when Seth and Jacob each seem to be searching for a purpose that doesn't really come to them at the end. I felt it was alluding to some symbolic connection between Seth and the daughter, as if she's now destined for a life of violence similar to Seth, after experiencing her entire family get killed without any enlightening sense of justification to make sense of it.
I don't want to hear anything about I don't believe in vampires, because I don't fucking believe in vampires, and what I saw is fucking vampires.
But overall, From Dusk Till Dawn is more of a staple to the exploitation grindhouse era than the double bill Tarantino and Rodriguez eventually made. It completely rejects morals and meaning. It's unfair as if it's some sick, twisted joke to watch innocent characters suffer. You'd think the Gecko brothers would get their comeuppance and almost be damned to hell as Father Jacob eventually finds his faith again. But as the anti-moral code behind such films, it sets up the possibility for these arcs only to be completely ignored to fulfill the gratifying urge to showcase a violent spectacle. Despite how deliberately lowbrow films like this are, they do find a way to get under your skin in places. From Dusk Till Dawn is still provocative, and at times it feels uncomfortably real to the point that you do hope there is a light at the end of the tunnel. The displacement of the vampires is purely to provoke those senses even more dramatically, by completely tearing away the gritty scenario we're familiar with in cinema, and throwing us into a claustrophobic siege movie that's either like the worst dream imaginable, or maybe one of the best, depending on what end of the spectrum you are when it comes to embracing your sadistic side to kick some vampire ass. Hey folks, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on From Dusk Till Dawn in the comments below, and apparently because I still have your attention for some reason and you're patient enough with me, why not care to listen to a few words from our sponsor for this video, ExpressVPN. A VPN is a virtual private network that encrypts your IP address when you're online, whether it be on your phone, tablet, computer, or even your games console, so that you can safely and anonymously use the internet and protect your sensitive data from hackers, snoopers, or any other crazy people out there who are looking to steal your info. I mostly use it for credit card information when shopping online or using subscription services, and when I'm not being so paranoid, I mostly use it to access YouTube videos that are unavailable in my country, or to get around Netflix's god-awful UK selection. All I did was download ExpressVPN, select a random location in the US, smash that wee connect button, and suddenly I can freely browse a nice cheeky selection of films that I previously didn't have access to. ExpressVPN is less than $7 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's nothing to lose. If you want to try it out and it's not really your thing, they'll sort you out. So why not consider taking back your internet privacy today and find out how you can get 3 months free by clicking the link in the description box, expressvpn.com/Ryan. That's expressvpn.com/Ryan for 3 months free with 1 year package. Yay, that took me multiple takes this time, but what can you do? So take back your privacy today with ExpressVPN. Stay very, very safe, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye.